on the Brown Bears Sports Network from Learfield IMG College. Welcome to the Brown Bears Podcast. Now, here's your host, Scott Cordischi.
Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of our Brown Bears Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Cordischi. Glad you could join us. The Brown Bears Podcast comes your way each and every Friday, and you can catch it really anywhere. Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, coming up tomorrow night, we record this show or air it on Friday, Saturday night at the Rhode Island Convention Center. The 44th Brown Athletic Hall of Fame induction dinner and ceremony will take place. And joining us on the podcast this week are three men who will be inducted into the Brown Athletic Hall of Fame on Saturday. First of all, from the class of 2003, we have a two-time All-American, both in the sport of football and in the sport of men's lacrosse, Chas Gessner. Chas, how you doing?
I'm great. Good to see you, Scott, and the rest of this motley crew here. It's pretty awesome.
Great to be with you, Chas, and thank you for joining us. And you're right, it's great to be with one of the guys here, your former head coach of the Brown football team, 3 Ivy championships, 24 years at Brown, or actually 25, 21 as head coach. Phil Estes is with us. Phil, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Scott. It's great to be here with Russ and Chas, and a lot of great memories that we were able to embrace together. So this will be fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. And that last man that you just mentioned, Russ Fiore, the athletic trainer at Brown University for 39, Russ, or 40 years. How many years were you at Brown? I think you got here in 79. Is that right?
39 years. I just want to stay 1 year longer than Frank George. I wanted to beat him out. Yeah, 39 years.
Russ,
39 years. 39 great years. Just super.
You kept guys like Chas together, right? Chas, did Russ keep you together?
Oh yeah, we spent a lot of time together. Actually, a lot of time fighting each other, even too.
Chas didn't need much of an athletic trainer. He was a real tough kid and got himself back out there right away. Wasn't much stopping him.
Well, congratulations to all three of you on your upcoming induction into the Brown Athletic Hall of Fame. Coach, I'm going to start with you. You really need no introduction. For my money, the greatest football coach in the history of Brown University. You've won 3 of the 4 Ivy titles that the program has won. But take us back to when you arrived on College Hill in 1994 with Mark Whipple. What did you think you guys were getting into? Because obviously Brown football had been struggling, yet you guys immediately changed the culture of the program from one that had trouble winning games to one that expected to and did compete for championships.
You know what the big thing was is that we didn't listen to anyone. Many people came in and said because we didn't have an Ivy background, a lot of the people that Mark hired were coming from the Yankee Conference or schools like that at that time. And they just kind of felt like, that we wouldn't know the league and we wouldn't know how to handle some of those situations. And we completely ignored that. We went after guys that we thought were going to be tough, were going to be loyal, we're going to represent this program in the way that we thought it should be represented. And people that wanted to be humble. And we just went out and we searched the country and, trying to just let people know where Brown was. I mean, I'd go out to California and recruit and the guy would say, well, where is Brown? And, you'd have to kind of say, well, we're an Ivy League school and we're just south of Boston. And so it was just trying to educate people that Brown was an Ivy League school. And then we just went out there and we started to play what Mark Whipple, the running gun. Mark went out and we threw the football. And we had Jason McCullough at that time at the quarterback. And I think Trevor Yankoff was a kid that had played some at that point. And there were some real good, tough kids that were here, like Paul Fisher at running back. And we just went out there and put the guys together and just said, let's go out and have some fun. And I think that's what we did. We had fun and, we took no prisoners.
You mentioned airing it out. Chas, that had to be appealing to you when you were recruited by Brown. I'm sure you had choices, but you picked Brown. But what Brown was doing offensively under Whip and then under Phil when he took over as head coach in 98, it was unbelievable because back then teams were still running the football. It wasn't a pass-happy game like it is today. So did that appeal to you as a guy that was a wide receiver saying, man, there aren't a lot of schools throwing the ball like Brown. This might be a good fit for me?
Absolutely. I mean, out of college, we had a split tailback offense, and I caught maybe 20 balls my senior year. So just the opportunity to come into an offense like that was exciting. I mean, I stayed with Sean Morey on my recruiting trip, and he had gotten a lot of accolades. He had caught a lot of balls. He was in the Senior Bowl at the time, or about to go to the Senior Bowl, and that was exciting as a high school kid. And I think the video that they sent me was, I believe, the year prior, maybe 2 years prior to that, which was Brown Penn, and the score was like 62-58 or something like that. So yeah, so it seemed like a really exciting brand of football, and perfect for a receiver that wanted the ball every play.
Russ, as head athletic trainer, football was one of your primary sports. And look, you had been around a lot of coaches, a lot of sports programs at Brown that had great seasons and some not so great. When did you kind of get the feeling, either when Whip came in with Coach Estes or when Phil took over in '98, that we got something good going here?
Right away, immediately. So you just knew. I didn't know. I didn't really know the coach. We all knew Whip, right? Because Whip had been at Brown. He had coached. Everybody knew Whip. I really didn't know the other coaches, but immediately they not demanded, but they got the respect of the whole team and all the players. It was amazing how the kids caught on to them. It was a great thing.
Phil, in year two as head coach, so you take over for Whip in 1998. In year two, you win an Ivy League championship in '99 with the guy that's with us on this Zoom, Chas, with James Perry, our current head coach, as your quarterback. I don't know if you expected it to happen so quickly, but I look back at that '99 team, boy, there was a lot of talent on that team. James still holds a lot of the records today in both Brown and Ivy League football history for quarterbacks, as does this guy, Chas. He's still in the record books nationally in FCS football.
Well, to be honest with you, the addition of Chas at the wide receiver position, he actually, that Yale game, the first game of the year, the great thing you knew about Chas was that he catched the ball. We could throw him a hitch and he could turn it into a big play. And we went up and down the field. I think we were calling it, Chas, you'd know better, 70 or 80 exit. And it's basically Chas at the X, and all he's doing is running the hitch. And basically, we kept throwing that hitch and letting Chas go up and down the field. And there were times where I thought, well, they're going to bite on this. They're going to get out of that soft cover too. And we would start running an exit and go. So Chas running a hitch and go over there. But they weren't biting. They were saying, go ahead, just keep throwing that hitch. And, the big thing about that team was that extra point. And the fumbled snap and the pitch to one of the slowest guys that we had, Rob Scholl, who brings it in to score. I mean, we were there to tie the game, and we won the game. And there was something about that at that win that we kind of said, yeah, now we know. We have something here, and we can beat the best, and we have something special.
Yeah, Rob Scholl got the lateral and took it in for two to pick up the win at the Yale Bowl, or as Coach Estes likes to call it, the Brown Bowl, because Brown had a lot of success at the Yale Bowl, Chas.
We sure did. We sure did.
What do you remember about that season, Chas? You come in as a freshman, you're an Ivy League champion right away.
Yeah, I mean, it was, first of all, I didn't expect, there was a bunch of injuries, I think, that year in training camp, or a couple of injuries at the receiver position that allowed me to even get into a spot where I could potentially start contributing as a freshman. And
well, Chas, I remember if we had a better trainer, there may not have been as many injuries at the position.
I don't think it was so much the training as the 4-foot mud on the practice field.
And the big ruts in the field.
Exactly. Yeah. But going into that game, I can remember being so nervous. I knew I didn't know everything I needed to know. And I was up all night in the hotel the night before, threw up a bunch of times heading into it. And then that 2-minute drive, I remember, because James Perry and Steve Campbell were basically telling me where to go on that last 2-minute drive. We were running plays. And by the way, that 80 exit was not a hitch. It was an under. So I was getting smashed by linebackers every time.
Well, it was an under if you were getting man. If you were supposed to.
Yeah. But I remember those guys, they were just telling me where to line up and where to run. I'd run an out or a shoot, or, I knew 80 exit for sure. But, that was just such a crazy drive. And like Coach said, I think that just galvanized that team. And for me, coming in as a freshman, that everything was moving really fast, and those guys really helped slow it down. Especially a guy like James Perry, just such a leader, and as a receiver, a guy that just puts the ball in the right spot every time. Just right in stride every time. Just made it easy for all of us.
Russ, under Phil, Brown became known as wide receiver U in FCS football. And to think we went from Maury to Campbell to Chas, I mean, all playing either together or back to back to back. I mean, we've had a lot of great receivers in the history of Brown football. You're talking about three of the very best right there.
So much fun to watch. Oh my God, there were such good athletes, such good players, and I'm on the sideline right next to them watching them play. It was like a dream come true. It was just great.
And tough kids too. You've told me stories about guys that they probably shouldn't have gone back in the game, and they'd sneak around. Sean Morey would find his helmet and say, "I'm going back in the game," after you would pull him out.
I did that. I did that a lot of times. Like even once, I'll tell a little quick story about Chas. So we're playing someplace down south, maybe Towson. I'm not sure if you remember this.
Oh,
Chas.
it's hot as hell down there. Oh.
Playing, I think it was the Towson game. So it was a tough game. They had really good players, really good defensive backs. And Chas gets whaled, right? He gets hit really, really hard. So he comes out, he's out of the game, not because of that, but he's out of the game. Offense is out. And he's on one knee, and I can just see blood dripping from his face, blood dripping from his nose, blood dripping from his mouth. I go, oh my God. So I go over to Chas and I said, "You all right? Are you okay?" He goes, "That kid is a great player. He just clocked me, and he is great." Gave the kid credit for whaling him. I said, "Oh my God!"
You know what I remember about that game as well. The Towson game is, Chas, if you remember, we were moving you everywhere. From the slot to outside.
I remember playing a little tight end.
We put you at tight end. To kind of hide you wherever we could hide you to get you the ball. We were doing whatever we could, man. And I know you got beat up, but we were just like, keep going, buddy, keep going.
that was the funnest thing, right? I just how creative you were with offense and how you knew how to move guys into the right spots and get the right looks. I mean, that's very underrated. As a coordinator, I've played in a lot of different places since then, and all coordinators don't have that skill. And just as a receiver, being able to do that, and I actually don't remember that, Russ, which is funny, because I probably got a couple of screws knocked loose.
That's one of the things I'll never forget. Never. The
one I do remember, Russ, was at Fordham, freezing cold rain.
The finger.
Yeah, in warm-ups, a slant hit the front of my finger, and the bone popped out of my pinky. And I'm looking down at it, and I go over by that point, though, I knew, I could go to Russ and I could be like, "Listen, tape this shit up and let's go." Right? Like, instead of it being some big production and all this stuff. And Russ was great about that. He did. I think we, probably duct taped it, and then I ended up getting stitches after the game.
Yeah, tried to get it cleaned out back in Providence. Yeah, that was something to play with. You don't usually see dislocations with bones sticking out, Yeah. So when you came over to me and showed me your finger with the bone sticking out, I'm going, "Oh my God, now what?" He said, "Hurry up, get it back in place. Let's go." Bam.
Yeah,
tape it off.
Let's go. Yeah, and then Russ made a special contraption that week in practice, because I had my finger stitched up and obviously couldn't catch balls. And Russ said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do." And this was what Russ did, right? He said, "Here's what we're going to do. Make a fist, and I'm going to put a cast over your hand so you have a club, right? And you're going to practice like that with a club this week." So the creativity was always fun too.
Yeah, I just didn't want to see you get hurt. I know you could catch the ball. Coach knew you could catch the ball, so we just wanted to protect you and get you to the next game.
Russ, was that one of your many inventions?
So Scotty, here's another thing, just to show you how tough Chas is we and I think it was the Fordham game, we were really struggling with our kickoff return. And so I wasn't very happy about the whole thing. And I remember going to Chas and some of the guys and telling them that we're making some changes with the kickoff return. And so Chaz automatically thinks that I'm going to put him back there and he's going to, catch and run the football. And I said, what we're going to do is I want to put my toughest and best guys and put them up in the front line so that they would block for this. He wasn't too happy about that, but if I remember, I think we ended up taking one of those for a touchdown against Fordham. So,
yeah, Steve Campbell.
Just trying to tell
Steve
Chaz
Campbell.
that, listen, it isn't always about the guy that carries the ball, but it's the guys that are tough up front, But it was just his expression. He was like, oh, well, great, let's go. How am I, where do I line up? I said, yeah, way up front there. Start blocking number 3, from the inside. And, but that was just a thing. I could move Chaz around. I knew he was going to give me his best. And, one of the best players I've probably ever had the opportunity to coach, for sure.
Chaz, you were an awesome 3-sport athlete in high school. Did you know coming to Brown that you wanted to play 2 sports? And I'm wondering, how did that go with Phil? Because a lot of coaches don't want their athletes to play 2 sports because you're missing spring football and all those reps. As it turns out, you were an All-American at Brown in both lacrosse and football. But how did that go, like that conversation with Phil? Or is that one of the reasons you came to Brown? Did Phil say, I'll let you play 2 sports?
It is, and I'd actually love to hear Coach tell his side of this story because I can tell you how I recall it, and I bet it's different. But yeah, I came to Brown. Lacrosse was kind of my first love and a sport that I felt like I was, even probably better at than football, and so that was a big deal for me. So I did talk to Coach, and he was like, "Yeah, absolutely. If you want to play both, then you can play both." And then after my freshman year, I'm going into my first lacrosse season. And we butted heads quite a bit. Coach made me come to all of the 5 a.m. morning winter workouts. And so I was doing that. And then he didn't make me actually participate, but I had to go to him. So I was doing that and then doing a full day of classes and then doing lacrosse practice, which at the beginning of the lacrosse season, it's just all running.
Yeah.
So I was dying. And I would sleep through alarms. I would show up kind of late, and there was a couple of times where we definitely butted heads on that because I felt like he was trying to force me to just play football. But the interesting thing is after coming back my sophomore year and playing that sophomore season and showing that I could handle it, or at least this is kind of how I perceived it. I felt like Coach really kind of laid off. I think it seemed like he wanted to make sure I could actually handle that. I could do it, and I could still play football at a high level and still keep that as a priority. And after that, I think it was pretty much smooth sailing.
Coach, what's your side of the story?
So he's right. I did push him to do the winter workouts and that, but for me, it was Chaz had already established himself as a freshman. He was a player. There was no question about that. But my thing is, I didn't want him to ever lose, that connection to the team. I wanted not Chaz, but I wanted the team to know, look at what this guy's doing. This guy's special, isn't any more special than anybody else. He's out here working his ass off. Chaz did not need spring or winter workouts. He did not, other than, he's a little undisciplined, but other than that, he was a great athlete. It didn't matter whether he did spring ball or not. He was going to come into the fall camp. He was just going to be the guy that he was. He's just a special player. But I really didn't want him to lose the connection with the rest of the team, just thinking like, hey, well, I get to do this and I get to miss the hard part of football. To his credit, he did it. And after his freshman year, we eased up on that because he was already established himself as being the very best in both sports. And I didn't worry about it after that. But I truly did not want him to lose his connection to football. And so I did. I kind of forced some things on him. But, with Chaz and I, let me tell you something. Chaz and I butted heads an awful lot. Chaz could get out of hand and so forth. He got out of hand in the Princeton game, and he got a couple of unsportsmanlike. And one of them was, for whatever reasons he did. And I told him, I said, Chaz, one more time, you get an unsportsmanlike, you're gone. I said, you'll sit the rest of the game. We used Chaz as the jumper against Cornell to block. This is why I say what a special athlete. We used Chaz in every situation we could. Moved him around. Whatever we asked him to do, he did. So we used him as a jumper to block the field goal and extra point. Against Cornell, Chas falls as he goes up to block and falls down between the legs of the center. I'm pretty sure it was Cornell. I'm not sure. And from what
It
I
was. I
understand,
didn't fall. He grabbed me in the air and pulled me down between his legs.
okay, but what Chas did is he found himself right between the guy's legs, and so he proceeded to punch him where it counts. And the flags throw whatever, they come over and they say, Coach, we didn't want to throw this flag, but it was bad. He punched him right in the balls. And so I looked at Chas and said, you're done. And he's looking at me, he says, you're kidding me. I said, no, you're done, go sit down. He was so mad at me. Oh my God, was he mad at me? I think your dad came in to see me as well, and he wasn't happy with me. But I just said, until Chas decides that he's going to be a more disciplined player and he's going to be a team guy, I said, I'm not going to play him. But I never had a problem after that. And
That was a good hard lesson.
I'll tell another story about Penn and just to show you how I felt about Chas, but I'll tell that later.
That's a good one too.
I know what you're going to talk about, and I'm looking forward to hearing that. Russ, you were so well liked by all the athletes that you treated and the coaches you worked with. And two of my favorite Russ Fiore stories are when you worked men's basketball, and Glenn Miller at the time had it going with, I think Mike Martin was one of his players at the time. And anytime Glenn Miller would get pissed off at the officials, he'd take off his blazer and he would chuck it invariably at you on the bench. You'd get the jacket in the face. And then on Sundays in season with Phil, you'd come up into his office and Phil would see you walk to the door and he'd be like, oh, great. The fucking Grim Reaper's here. All right, tell me who's hurt.
Yeah, it was. I got good news and I got bad news. That's how it went.
Yeah, it wasn't good to give the bad news. The good news was good. It was fun to give. So I was really very, very friendly with the football coaching staff. All of them. They were great guys. They were like my best friends. So on Sundays, you play Saturday, and on Sundays, the kids would come in. They'd all get treatments and everything. So before we went out, after I gave the treatments, I would go up and give coach an injury report, right?
Yep.
So it was all, you can picture this, all the football coaches sitting in the big room, the offensive room.
Yep.
And I walk in, Russ, 5'8", if on a good day. I got all these enormous men. Oh God, here he is. What are they going to give me now? So I'd have to give them the injury report. And Coach Estes would always say, Russ, you always want your team to be better than mine. The injury team better than the real team. But the good news was we had a lot of tough kids in those days. So the injury report really wasn't that bad. Frank was really doing a lot of the injury reports when Phil first got there. And I took over in 2004 when Frank left. But it was great. I enjoyed every minute of it. It was fun to work with Coach Estes, fun to work with all the other coaches. And like you said, we had some really tough kids on those teams.
Yeah. Well, one of those guys, Russ, was Nick Hardigan. You remember 2005? We opened the season at Georgetown. It is hot as hell. The on-the-field temperature is probably like 115 degrees. You're giving guys IV bags at halftime to rehydrate them. And I think, didn't Hardigan say to you, no, don't give me one, Russ. I want to show the rest of the team that I'm tough. I can play my way through this. Then in the third quarter, he got dehydrated, and I think he had to give him one anyway, right?
Yeah, he had to have, but there was no getting away from it. If he wanted to go back on the field, he was going to get one. And we had three of them. We had three really, really good players. And I can't remember who they were, Phil.
Zach Diossi.
Zach, that's
Diossi
right.
was one. Hardigan. And there was somebody else.
There was another really, really good player. And it was just, it was quick. You don't have much time at halftime. We're trying to get the kids hydrated. We're pushing the bags, the fluid into their systems. All of a sudden, they're back on the field. And I don't know if I can remember this exactly right, but Nick, he had, what was he averaging for yardage? Like 250 yards a game running, something like that. Yeah. A lot of yardage. And this game here, by the time the dust settled, he might have had, I don't know, maybe 150 yards, which is pretty good for a running back, right? Yeah. At that level. Yeah. And everyone's going, boy, he didn't do that well. I wonder why he really didn't do that well. I'm going, are you kidding me? Yeah. This kid's totally dehydrated.
Well, we learned at the Towson game, because that's where we didn't have the IVs, and we lost a lot of guys in that game. So a few of them didn't come home with us. They
I
stayed.
didn't come. I didn't come home.
Yeah, that's right. Russ didn't
I
come
didn't.
home.
I didn't come home either. So yeah, that's what we learned. I mean, you're on turf, right? So it was on turf. It's much hotter on the turf field than it is on grass, and that was a real disaster. I mean, that was terrible. The end of the game, I have one of our players. I can't remember who it was, but he's standing up and he can't move. So we had to have the golf cart go out to his side, and we got him like a board and put him on the golf cart to get him back into the room so we could get IVs in him. Oh, it's terrible. And when I all week I was telling the players, this is going to be bad. You got to hydrate yourself. We're going to have salt. We need this. We need that. Make sure you take it. Make sure you hydrate. Make sure you don't lose any weight over the week. So yeah, Russ, we'll do it. I think we flew down, Phil. I think we flew down there.
Yes, we did.
And I get off the plane, and you can feel the humidity right away and the heat. And I go, oh my God, I had no idea it was going to be this bad. Yeah. Oh my God. Because we don't, in New England, not that bad. Down there, oof.
Brutal.
It was terrible. Brutal.
Chas, was it your senior year that you tied Jerry Rice's record and caught 24 balls against URI? Was that your senior year?
I think it might have been my junior year.
Junior year? Okay.
Junior year or senior year. I can't remember.
What do you remember about that? What do you remember about that game other than every time you turned around, the ball was coming your way?
I remember going into the game that week. I remember going into the meeting room and coach saying to me, hey, listen, like based on how these guys play and what we're going to do, we're going to get you the ball a lot. I think he even said, we're going to get you the ball the amount of times of your jersey number. And I was 23, which was pretty awesome foreshadowing. But yeah, I do remember that game. And I remember I actually dropped a bomb down the sideline that would have been the record. And I remember that. I remember being real pissed and frustrated about that. And then I also remember us barely losing that game too, which really sucked. But it was a cool experience, especially looking back and reflecting on it and just how special that is and just how incredible just having the opportunity to get the ball in your hands that many times as a receiver is, something that doesn't happen ever, really.
So Phil, that just didn't happen throughout the course of the game. It was your game plan was, no, we're going to get you the ball a lot today.
Oh yeah. There were certain, defenses that just catered to certain plays. We ran what we called choice routes and stuff like that. And we just knew we were going to do it. And I was not afraid to call the same play back to back to back to back. I remember a game against Dartmouth and Stevie has, I don't know what it was, 18 catches. And after the game, they asked me, they said, Coach, seems like you ran the same play to the same guy every play. And I said, we did. It was basically like an S choice and Stevie coming inside, getting the ball and off he went. And there were variations off from it. But, it was just like, I was not afraid to call. If they're going to keep giving it to me, it's again and again. So,
all right.
Yeah, run it till they take it away.
Yeah, exactly.
Give us this story, the Penn story with Chas.
So it was probably Chaz's junior year. It was there. And I forget how the game went. It went back and forth. And I think there was an onside kick that they were offsides or we offsides. A lot of confusion, this whole thing. But basically, we have to throw the football to win the game. We got to have a Hail Mary type thing. But we had added on to the Hail Mary was to go and just keep pitching the ball back. It was a razzle dazzle type thing. And in that game, we actually got it going, and Chas is the last on the other side, goes to catch the football, and he might have some free run after that, and he dropped it. And I know it hurt him. He took that
Still have
really
nightmares
hard.
about that.
And their
20 years
quarterback,
later.
who was the quarterback, Chas? Do you remember?
Gavin Hoffman
Effin Hoffman came over to Chas and got in his face and gave him the choke sign. I could have. Scott, it was so hard for me not to go out there and just knock that guy. I wanted to fight for Chas. I was so pissed off. That really hurt. I know it hurt Chas. And I told him, right after the game, I said, listen, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. I said, next year, I'm going to line you up at corner, and we're going to call, for a corner blitz, and you're going to go in there. I said, it's up to you. I said, but you can take an unsportsmanlike and you can hit him from behind. You can clock him. It's up to you, or you can, do whatever you want. But I said, we're going to call this play and you go do it. And so we played Penn the next time. We put Chas out there, and to his credit, he laid off him. He knew that would have been a bad penalty at that time. But I promised him. I said, you can go in there, and I said, it's up to you. However, your revenge. And the revenge was we won the game. So that was even sweeter.
Chas, how great is it to have a coach like Phil that has your back in a moment like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best feeling as a player, honestly. And it was why Coach and I ultimately had a great relationship, and it was why Coach could coach the way he did, because he kind of had our trust and respect, and we knew that. Right. And he was really hard on us in those moments where we needed that. But, I've experienced a lot of other coaches that are that way, but don't have that trust and confidence that's built. That's a two-way street, and and the wheels can come off. You lose the locker room doing it that way. And, I think myself and most other guys can attest to the fact that trust and respect was a two-way street. And that's invaluable as a player.
Russ, you're being honored for not just your 39 years of great service at Brown, but you've done a lot of other things in your life as well. You're an inventor. You created ankle braces. You've created tools for your trade for athletic trainers. How much of that have you had success with over the years?
Yeah, it's been good, Scotty. It's just something I can do, something that I don't have to try to do. Even when I was 8 years old, I could do that kind of stuff. And it's been fun for me. It keeps me busy. I enjoy doing it. I want to say one more thing about Coach Estes. So we'd be at a game, we'd be at a practice, we'd be at, some kind of football activity. And, I'm busy. So I got a staff, but I'm busy. I'm, treating injuries. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm getting water ready. I'm getting whatever I need to get ready. So you can't see everything, you can't see the whole field. You can't see the whole locker room. You can see what you can see. So not one time, multiple times, Coach Estes would come over to me, once at the locker room at Harvard, at practice multiple times, and say, Russ, get him out. He's not right. One of the players that's on the field that's a very, very good player, and Coach would go, Russ, he is not right. Get him out now. I go, oh my God, that's great.
Yeah.
He really was there for the kids. It was a wonderful thing. I haven't seen that in many coaches.
No,
I really haven't.
Look, I think, as you both know, and Phil, you can speak to this. I know these kids were football players for you, and you were trying to get them to win games, but they were a lot more than football players for you, right? You were like a second father to them. Their moms, their dads entrusted you for 4 years with their sons, and you took that responsibility very seriously.
I did in every aspect. I had my son play for me, and that was a great honor to share 4 years of college with Brett. But all these guys are they're just good friends to this day. And it's always important to me. I can tell you another story about Chas, because Chas and I have a huge history. When Chas was between, I think, the Patriots and the Jets, he decided he was coming back to Brown to work out. And I said to him, well, come live with me. I said, I got plenty of room at my house. You can live at the house. Brett was in high school at that time, I guess, maybe even junior high. And I said, but maybe you could help us out with the team. I said, talk to the receivers and all that. So he did. Chas did his workout and then come out to practice. But then after practice, Chas would go home and he would go to my house and he would eat my dinner and then play with my kids. And like I would come home later that night, and Chaz would be sitting in my chair watching TV. And I just remember looking at him and I said, Kate, any dinner? She says, well, Chaz ate your dinner, but there's probably some stuff you can heat up in the refrigerator and stuff. The other thing that Chaz did, which I wanted to strangle him, is he had his Super Bowl ring with the Patriots. He would leave on his bedside stand. And one day I go in there and Brett and his friends were all putting the ring on and stuff like that. Here's like a $30,000 ring. And I was like, Brett, put that down. I'm like, Chaz, you need to take care of that. I am not going to be responsible. It's that Brett's kid has it at, down at the high school trying to pick up somebody. But I loved Chaz and I wanted to help him in any way that I could. And I wanted him to be successful and always have. And, but it used to crack me up because I would go home and, he'd be in my chair and he'd be, or I'd walk in and they'd all be at the dinner table and Chaz is sitting in my seat. And I just, hey, okay,
Is that an accurate description, Chaz?
Yeah, I'd say that's fairly accurate. I don't know about stealing the meal, but I might have done that inadvertently.
No, you did.
But honestly, I mean,
yeah,
like
the hardest part, Chaz, was when Brett called you dad. That kind of
Yeah, right. I do remember maybe wrestling him in the living room and body slamming him a couple of times. We played football in the living room quite a bit. But no, I mean, but honestly, how often do you ever hear stories like that, right? I mean, just being able to, rely on coach even after I graduated and, him welcoming me into his home and his family and, that was a big deal, right? It's still to this day. And we'll be forever grateful for that. And it kind of really sums up how coach is and how coach was. And, like I was talking about, that kind of trust and respect and just knowing that he had our backs as players and as people, as humans, I think that's an amazing quality that maybe not a lot of people even know about coach.
Chaz, coach mentioned your Super Bowl ring. So you graduate from Brown and you're on the Patriots practice squad. And I remember seeing you after the Super Bowl win in Houston over the Carolina Panthers, celebrating that victory with the Lombardi Trophy and all your Patriot teammates. I mean, how cool is that? You graduate and 1 year later, you're a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, what a crazy experience. I mean, a lot of that was just such a blur, going into Brown and winning an Ivy League championship as a freshman and then, going into the league and being a part of that championship team. Just a really incredible opportunity and experience and so much fun to be around and I'll cherish a lot of those memories forever. Just being able to be a part of that team and that organization and make the friends that I made there and learn the things that I learned there.
So
for sure.
Answer this question for the three of us and everybody listening to the podcast. So that was year 3 for Tom Brady as starter. The 01 season, he came in for Bledsoe, won a Super Bowl. 02 season, I think they went 9-7, missed the playoffs, and then they get back to the Super Bowl. Your team in the 03 season, and you win it in February of 2004. Did you know that Tom Brady was that special back then? I mean, now we look at him as the greatest player in the history of the NFL, 7 Super Bowl titles, but was there anything about him that told you, wow, this guy is something else, or was he still kind of in the growing process back then?
A little bit of both. I mean, I think there were things, especially looking back, that where you could see, especially when I got a little bit more perspective of being around the league a little bit more and being around players a little bit more. It was kind of difficult because at the time I didn't really know any different, right? Like to my knowledge, that's how everybody was. But then looking back after having gone to a couple of different places and being around a lot more guys, then you start putting the pieces together and being like, holy shit, this guy was on another level and he was doing stuff that no one else was doing. I think the biggest thing about him was he found ways to get better that no one else had even thought about. Right. And like that was his goal and his quest. He would do these drills that no one else had ever seen. He would spend his time thinking about things or talking about things or practicing things that no one had ever thought about. And he just kind of held everybody to that same standard that he held himself to. I mean, he would run meetings. I want to say every Wednesday morning, which was the first week of practice after our day off on, no, I'm sorry, Tuesday morning after our day off on Monday. And he would run the meeting and he would talk about what he had seen scouting film. After the game on Sunday, he would start advanced scouting the team we were going to play the next week. He would run a meeting and say, here's what I've seen. Here's what I'm looking for. He would run it with the receivers, the running backs, and the tight ends, and just his meeting. Right. And like at the time, I'm like, oh, that's just what you do. Right. But then you go to other places and that's definitely not, how everybody else did it. So really cool to experience that and be a part of it, and definitely learn lessons that I've applied just to my own life and business and everything else since.
Russ, I did an interview today with a Rhode Island College broadcast journalism student, and he was asking me in all my years at Brown, are there any, favorite moments that stand out? And I said, it's hard to pick one, but I pointed right to the three Ivy League championship seasons of 99, 05, and 08. I pointed to the 2010 night game at Brown Stadium where we beat the Harvard Crimson. And I also pointed to those Glenn Miller days when Penn and Princeton weekend was just off the hook inside the Pizzatola. Do you have any moments that stand out in your career that you look back at, and say, wow, that one really stands out above the rest?
Yeah, that 2099 championship. All we ever heard was from was it the class of 76, Phil? All we ever heard was, we got a championship. We got this. We got that. No one's done it, blah, blah, blah. And then finally, Phil does it, 99, the last game. Were we at Columbia that
Oh, it was
game?
at Brown.
We were
At Brown, at Brown. And it was amazing. It was just so much fun. Yeah, the night we had the night game against Harvard, that was great. But winning that championship at Brown, I'm on the field celebrating like forever. I forgot about to go in the training room and help the kids. I'm wandering all over the place. And finally I go, oh my God, I better go do my job.
Bill, asking you what your favorite championship is probably like asking a father who's your favorite kid, right? You're not going to answer it. But do you have any moments that stand out above the rest? Obviously, you mentioned one of them, Brett playing for you. I had to be super special.
Yeah, I like for you the same thing. It would be all the championships. 99 was special because it hadn't been done in such a long time. To get that ice bucket over your head and to watch the goalposts come down, that would make, of the three, that would make that really, really special. But it's just, for me, it's just all of Brown and the people, the alumni, and how we come together and how we stuck together and how we helped each other out. And it always brings Lawrence Ruba to mind, and how special our alumni and the whole league, the Ivy League, came together to help Lawrence in any way that we could. And that was such a hard time for me, to be able to go out there and see Lawrence out in San Francisco, and to see his declining health, and then to be there the night that he passed and just to say goodbye to him. I just remember, flying in. I was on a recruiting trip, and Coach Sheehan called me and said, we got to go. They want you to come down. Lawrence isn't going to make it through the night. And I got off a plane and turned around and met Frank at the airport, and flew right from there down to see Lawrence, and was able to go in there. But I just to see how the players, the coaches, the league, and our alumni, people like Dick Dresdale, that just embraced and helped and did whatever they could to get him the kind of care that he needed, was really special for me. And that's what makes Brown a special place.
Well, it's great that you bring that up, because on Monday they will hold the annual bench press for cancer, which was started by Lawrence's teammates to help him kind of offset all the medical bills that he had from flying out to the Stanford Medical Center. And since his passing, the Brown football programs kept that alive every year, raising money for the American Cancer Society and the Young Cancer Survivorship Program at Miriam Hospital for Young Adults. So, yeah. Great.
That's special. That's special.
Yep. Well, guys, Chas, I know you guys only get 2 minutes to say your thank yous at the banquet on Saturday night, and that's going to be hard for you guys, probably. Anybody you want to thank now? You've got the time. I'm not going to hold you to 2 minutes here before we wrap.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I think I'll definitely use some of that time to thank Coach Estes, obviously, and for sure, and my parents. But I think besides that, I mean, Russ, honestly, that as a player, you don't love being in the training room, right? Because that means that something's wrong and you're trying to work on something. But the way that Russ was, he's just always so positive and so happy, and just that kind of vibe that he set for the training room. It really wasn't as bad of a place to be as it could have been, and just Russ, like I said, being creative with helping guys get back on the field as fast as possible and not holding guys back, and but figuring out kind of that balance between a guy wanting to maybe push himself too far and keeping him safe. And then beyond that, just the rest of the team, right? Like all the guys that I played with, from James Perry to Steve Campbell, even Sean Morey, who kind of was a mentor to me, and all the rest of the guys on all those teams that just kind of paved the way, and we're great teammates, great tough players, a lot of amazing memories with those guys. And, that's really a brotherhood that lasts forever. And I think beyond that, just kind of Brown being the type of environment where you could do that, where I could kind of pull off being able to play lacrosse in the spring and football in the fall, figure out how to work that with the schedule and all those kind of things. That was a special thing that I don't take for granted, and that I'll cherish forever.
Russ, before I ask you to if you want to say any thank yous to anyone, in addition to all the things that Phil Estes has done, building a championship program, winning Ivy titles, he also got a brand new state-of-the-art training room, a new locker room, a new football offices built toward the end of his tenure at Brown, which is pretty damn special too.
Oh my God, so beautiful. What a great training room. All the other facilities are great too, yeah. But because of Coach Estes, that training room is just amazing. Just great. I was going to retire a year earlier, and then we had the idea. Coach said, we're going to build a new training room. I said, okay, I'm not leaving now. I'm going to stay and watch that new training room get built and help build it, and become enemies with all the construction guys who hated me every day when I went into those meetings.
Oh, I was in those meetings with you. You were a pain in the ass, I have to tell you.
I had to make sure it got done right. It was fun. Yeah, they'd see me coming and the whole room would quiet down.
Russ, when you look back, though, at your career, I would imagine with all the thank yous, probably Frank George has to be at or near the top of the list for you, right?
Yeah, at the very, very top. So Frank bringing me to Brown 45 years ago, and being my mentor, there's nothing better than that. That's as good as it gets. He was the best of the best, and I learned from the best, just how to deal with people, how to deal with the doctors, how to deal with the parents. Everything you've got to do. He really kind of held my hand and brought me through all that stuff. So all the credit really goes to Frank.
That reminds me that I didn't mention Frank, and I should have too, because that's a package deal, Russ and Frank.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing, right? Just always positive and upbeat and happy guys, and just great guys to be around. That matters, right? It's like, you're hurt, you don't want to be in there, and you got guys that genuinely care, but also just are positive, happy, good vibe people. And Frank was definitely that as well. I really appreciate that too.
Phil, I don't know how you're only going to spend 2 minutes giving your thank yous out, because I know there's so many people that meant so much to him. I mean, the old guard, we used to refer to them, the Artie Jakowskis, the Gordon Perrys, the Dick Carroll,
the Brian Wallace's, all those. My big thing, Scott, the hardest part for me is the players, because how do you single out just a Chas or a Zach Diossi or a Sean Morey or a Steve Campbell or James Perry, or, there are so many people that are woven into that whole thing that made us special. There are guys that maybe people don't know their name, but they were instrumental in our success. And so it's hard for me to single out one player and miss out on maybe the 700 that I coached. And so for me, it's just, I celebrate all our players. I honor them, I appreciate them, and I thank them for just giving me the opportunity to coach them and be a part of their lives. And that's the most special part to me. I'll get through this, I tried to rehearse, to see if I could. At first, they told me it was 90 seconds. I was like, no way. And I tried and tried and tried. And so the closest I got was 2 minutes and like 15 seconds. So to maybe touch upon enough people. But for me, it's just my whole experience at Brown was life-changing. The Artie Jakowskis, the Gordon Perrys, the Ron and Muffy Sloan, John Barrelson. It's all people like that really changed my life, changed my family's life. It gave me an opportunity that I wouldn't have. Mark Whipple hiring me in the first place. I owe everything to Mark Whipple. And for Mark to say, this is the guy that should, step in behind me.
And Dave Roach having the confidence and saying, you know what, we're not opening up a coaching search. Phil's the guy.
Right. And here's the thing, Scott. I'll tell you, the best advice I got was from a guy named Tony Gould. Tony Gould said to me, Phil, hire people smarter, hire coaches smarter than you. And I sat there thinking about that. And I, went out there and I got Mike Kelleher, one of the best defensive coordinators, Frank Sheehan, just an outstanding coordinator, coach, and line coach, and Abbott Burrell and Paul Frazone and James Perry and people like that outstanding coaches. And, that made a big difference for me. I mean, I always look back on what Tony said to me to hire, because head coaches have egos and you can't think of, well, who's smarter than me? But I went out there and I found people that were definitely smarter than me and did such a great job. And I got just great players. I mean, just, like, again, when we recruit, they said, what do you recruit? You recruit toughness first. People that are humble and want, think that they can get better, and people that are loyal. And I found guys like that in Chaz and Sean and Zach Diossi and, Joe Karkutsky and, people like that. It was just, it was quite an experience, Scott. I can't tell you. 25 years. I could go on forever. We can make this an 8-hour show of just telling stories because they're all special.
Russ, I felt like, did I cut you off there, Russ? Did you finish your thank yous? I felt like I cut you off there.
Yeah, he did it in 10 seconds. Frank George.
No, that was more like 11 seconds, but I got make sure I got Frank in. The other ones would be like my orthopedic surgeons, Dr. Fideli, Holstein, Owens. I mean, those guys were great, and they knew they were cutting edge techniques. They were wonderful people. They were great at sports medicine, and they, at a level like we were at Brown, you have got to have good doctors, because a lot of parents will take the kids to their home physician and get a second opinion, and I always encourage that. I would give them their diagnostic tests. I'd give them the doctor's notes, and I say, please go see your doctor. Whoever your mom or dad wants you to see, please go see them. And it would come back exactly the same diagnosis, the same treatment, the same everything. So my orthopedic surgeons were great. My staff was great. I had a great staff. Matt Culp, who helped me out immensely. Matt was a great associate head athletic trainer. We spent countless hours going through the hiring process every year to make sure we got good people, and we did. And that really made my job a lot easier. So thank God I had the staff that was willing to do that.
Well, Russ, Chaz, Phil, I mean, thank you for all the great memories you provided me selfishly. And I think I can say the same on behalf of the entire Brown athletics community. I mean, what you guys have done, what you guys have meant to not just Brown football, but to Brown athletics, I think in general cannot be overstated. And congratulations, well-deserved honor for all three of you Saturday being inducted into the Brown Athletic Hall of Fame. And thanks for joining us on the Brown Bears podcast.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scotty.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Chas Gessner, Phil Estes, and Russ Fiore, our guest on the Brown Bears podcast. That'll do it for us. Thanks for joining us. You've been listening to the Brown Bears podcast.
You've been listening to the Brown Bears podcast on the Brown Bears Sports Network. For more information on Brown University athletics, visit brownbears.com.